All right, everybody, welcome. I just have to note that the platform here is continuously leveling up its game. We got a countdown last week and music on top of it this week. So, the bits are just getting added simultaneously. Welcome to the B2B Growth Lab. It is the usual suspects minus one today, but we'll make do with what we have. And subject-wise, we're here to talk about long and complex sales cycles. One of the first things I want to pull the rug back on is knowing what your sales cycle is, but lets you know what a long one is relative to it. And
what's the longest one you know of, Jacob? We can have some fun with this, right?
I'm working with the founder right now. And so I don't even know if this is a sales cycle because he is a find, fund, and fix kind of person who's taken more than one company public. And the fundraising sales cycle can take a couple of years, I'm noticing.
Okay.
It takes an incredible amount of perseverance, something I haven't done. I'm just learning about working with this individual, but to go out and be like, okay, we got this set up, acquired, let's start building. And I think my job is done, right? Like when you put together a high rise, you just have a Gantt chart, cement, 2x4, drywalls. Things show up on time, right? When you're building a company, you do not have that kind of control over things, and the market's shifting
all the time.
And coming from Vancouver, I heard the stories and I saw this many times about how the fixtures and the finishings inside the deliverables are far off from the show suite just because of how much the price will change in between this is the flooring you get and this is the flooring you've got.
Right.
But that's a gross oversimplification of some of the stuff that I've seen happen in the last couple of years in terms of like when and how the money comes in, what the best practices are to do with it, and then how to kind of go from there.
Yeah, some of the cycles can be crazy. There's in the medical device world, right? You have like MRIs and like diagnostic robots that sit in the basement of hospitals, right? All those things that have a lifetime of like 25 plus years, right? Yeah. 15 plus years. Like the sales cycle is not 25 years. Right. It's not the same thing as the replacement cycle, because we have to ask ourselves, where's the starting point? If you're going to sell one of those two things, when do you need to be engaged with the customer to start, right? What is their planning process? When do they start making the decisions? And then how long is that cycle all the way through all those decisions, refitting the lab, right? All of the installation of the machinery, commissioning, IQ, PQ, OQ, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the way through until you actually say it's billable, right?
That's a really great point. And it comes to top of mind. I was just back in Vancouver this week, and they're building the new hospital.
Right.
And that may be the sales cycle for some of that equipment, because like the old hospital can be like, yeah, sure, we know this piece of equipment, it's time to update it. We're just not taking a wall out right now.
Right.
Right. We're not dismantling an entire floor because it's disruptive to operations as well. So yeah, that's an incredibly valid point and something that I think doesn't get considered a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes when I was in pharma, they some people customers would be very aware of the evolution of technology, and they understood the longevity of their decision. And that would give them incredible drive for diligence, right? So before I say yes, I want to be really sure, because this is like, you could have a kid and they go to college and graduate before I buy new
Right.
whatever it is, right? I mean, it's a thing.
It's a
It has
20-year
tremendous
decision.
cost implications,
Yeah.
right? So that sales cycle is longer, but
Mhm.
it's not the same thing as the replacement time. And in all those trades, when you're building a hospital, right? Like, how far ahead was the land sale? That's one cycle, right? Complicated.
Yeah.
How far ahead was the concrete? Not that far, but it has a lead time. All the steel, that could actually be one of the longer ones, right? For a modern building. The balance of the building materials, all the faucets, all the fixtures, flooring, right? They have supply chains for all of those, all with different sales timelines, different cycles,
Yeah.
right? So syncing those all up so the right thing's there at the right time, right? You can't afford for the flooring to be 6 weeks late.
Yeah.
That's not a thing, because every day that's not open could be $1 million.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's incredibly well said. And, I think Gantt charting in and of itself, just as a planning process, is horrendously underutilized and underrated, except for in those environments where there is no choice, where you're like laughed out of a room if it's not there.
Right.
But it is an incredibly powerful tool to start really considering. We do this a lot because, again, like, to simplify it, we just break it into the 5 verticals: leads, conversion, sales, onboarding, and fulfillment. And people think of them as individual buckets, right? But like pre-transaction, like the lead process definitely overlaps with the conversion process, which overlaps with the sales process. And we were just kind of musing about this before we went live today. I had a couple conversations in this last week where I was kind of commiserating with other people who were in a support role instead of helping grow a business, and like how conversion wasn't even thought of as
Right.
part of the system, right? The powers that be, the leadership, were just like, lead sale. Like, this is what's supposed to be happening. Why isn't it happening? I don't know if they were sold magical thinking or misled, or they just don't understand how important the process is to take that lead, qualify it, educate it, and preemptively, plan before the sale. Otherwise, you end up with the stuff that we've touched on numerous times, which is, it's called churn, but really what it comes down to is disappointment on both ends.
Right. I'm in the middle of one of those right now. You learn so much early on sometimes that you can get too far ahead.
Well said.
Right? So pumping the brakes on this, and we've had 2 meetings with a third-party marketing partner who is incredibly transparent and is going to bring us to the owners, but we've not yet had a conversation with the owners.
Right.
So she's not a decision maker. They are.
Yeah.
So, like our first call, or a few of our calls have said, it's time to get back to qualifying, right? We're back at the beginning. We need to be listening and asking questions, validating the insights we think we have, listening for additional pain and insights, right? This is not the meeting where we close and talk pricing.
Mm-hmm.
This is not even a conversion meeting. This is back to the beginning.
Yeah.
right? And knowing where you are in that process, you can be forward thinking, absolutely, be ready, shorten your work investment when you have the inspiration, by all means, but don't put that on the customer. Go in there talking, market analysis and what you need to do. And right, this is the first meeting. That's the wrong posture. So know
Yeah.
where you are in the process, have an efficient process, but make sure that you're honoring the stage you're in is probably the right way to say it.
Yeah. And therefore defined.
Yeah.
At least bare minimum defined. Like, what is a lead? What is the conversion process you have? I'm a big fan of brainstorming, and so I'll overdo things on purpose. How do you get a lead to a sale? 20 steps. Why? So you can figure out that there are actually 13.
Right.
And so I will over engineer stuff, but I really appreciate that. To go back to the physical environment, some of the analogies we're using before, it's that over engineering that keeps us safe, right? Like, thank God you can fit so many people on a staircase in an apartment building or a high rise or an office tower.
Right.
Right? Because you never want to be in a situation where it's like, oh, only 4 people per landing. Sorry. Like, that's how we decided to build this thing. And I feel the same way about bridges. Thankfully, you can put more weight on them than you can fit cars. And that's a really good thing. And it surprises me how we don't translate that stuff into our own businesses. We don't over-engineer those things. We don't over-engineer these intangibles that you can't pressure test with 10, 50, or 500 pounds.
Or our homes, right? People buy water beds and they have to do major construction in order to get the water bed in their house.
Yes.
Right? Deflection on standard lumber. Like, come on, can't do it.
Yeah.
Couple 2x10s at 16 on center won't hold it.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad told me stories about that when he was, an employee working in they just put up like scaffolding systems and that kind of stuff, but it was always about the pieces of furniture that had to go into the penthouse apartment.
Right.
Because exactly what you're saying. Like, it was never built for a couch or a bed or anything of that size to make it up a service elevator.
Right.
And that's really the size of lift that needs to happen in a lot of organizations. And people are trying to go through the startup to scaling process. And it's misunderstood sometimes, the center of gravity and like the weight behind something like that, the effort or how much leverage it takes to really break through that plateau.
Yeah, there's the rule of threes, right? As you grow, right? That's part of that lift, part of that just challenge and scale. Sometimes you gotta make a bigger investment than you're comfortable with, take some risk in order to get forward faster, right? You can't be too tentative. You just need to be smart, aggressive.
Yeah. Or to move forward at all, right? Because it does take a certain amount of like momentum to get escape velocity from where you're at. And there's a financial commitment, which feels like a risk. And then there's also a mental and an emotional commitment, which probably feel like a greater risk. Because, you can usually quantify the spend side of things, but it's harder to measure the depth of change that happens, in here. There's a behavioral shift that's required in a lot of these scenarios. And that's one of the main sticking points we find in why we're so committed. We continuously build our team of fractionals. Right? I've really been leaning into this in the last year because I want to be able to turn to every client in every single situation, right? A leads conversation, a conversion conversation, a sales conversation, an onboarding, a fulfillment, a leadership, whatever it is, and turn to them and say, listen, call all three of these experts. Call all three of them. Why? Because you're going to hire one of them. Which one? The one you like the most, that makes the most sense to you. Why? Because they're going to lead you through this unknown to the other side.
Right.
They're going to help you make it known while we're trying to do our job, which is not explaining to you how you need to change how you think about business. It's letting us operationalize the pieces that don't exist.
So many. I feel like we're getting off track a little bit, but so many work so hard, they trap themselves in their business, and they can't work on their business, and they can't sacrifice the comfort of the margin to fuel the expansion.
Or the familiarity of the behavior, right? To loop it back to, the complex and long sales cycle.
Right.
It doesn't feel long or complex if you're the founder-led seller and you are unconsciously competent,
right,
at the 22 touch points. And when you talk to somebody else in your language and your thinking, it sounds like there's 4 steps, not 22.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of the mismatch comes from, because again, these people get so good at their role. And I didn't bring the slide today. I've got it of unconscious and incompetent, consciously incompetent.
Yep.
But that bridge of conscious competency, which is where any new team person hopefully is. You hopefully didn't bring them on consciously incompetent. Right? That can be a training issue, but hopefully you brought somebody on who is consciously competent, but they're still not you. They're still not unconsciously competent at doing all this stuff at a, seemingly reflexive level.
Right.
And that is a communication issue and a training issue. And again, a lack of SOPs, because you can't delegate that stuff if there's no clarity or system.
Yep.
So I would say a defined sales cycle first, knowing what the process of sales is, then being able to say on the long end, it's this long, on the short end, it's this short. But that is a huge leap forward for a lot of organizations.
It can vary so drastically too within an organization. So do companies have one sales cycle, or do they have the discipline to say, is it by product category or capital versus consumables versus commodities? Because they're all quite different, right? If you have a long tail business, if you're selling a mix of equipment versus consumables, like a Granger, right? That, what is the sales cycle? Okay, yes. Yeah. The answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that question. It reminded me of, I learned a super valuable lesson in sales cycles in general. And it was just through a friend's mom. She gave up her license for real estate and just did valuations, found a big enough office that she could do that, sit behind the desk, let her math brain do the work. And so if I had something I was interested in, I'd always bring it by, right? Why not have an expert look at it? Because she can scan it in 30 seconds and be like, do or do not spend more time on this. And so I was in that office one day and we were having this conversation, and she pointed over to this one desk and she said, it's that person's job to make sure every single name in the CRM gets a physical object every month. Why? Because their sales cycles were so long, but this shop had been around long enough and had done such a great job of that they sold to 3 generations inside of the same family. But you want a long, clearly defined sales cycle, there it is, right? Like the family maybe moves from its starter home to its like established home. And then what? Nothing for as long as that piece of medical equipment, right? 20, 25 years. Right? And then those kids, they don't like graduate high school and buy a condo. They go away to college first.
Right.
Right. Maybe they come back. If they do, right, then that second generation of property purchase happens. And then how long is that good for? Right. So yeah, 3 generations and maybe those 6 hypothetical sales that I'm inserting there. That's a really long play. Like, what would you say the math behind that is? 35, 40 years?
Oh. Maybe that's why in so many of those things there's no loyalty.
Right.
Right. Same thing with cars, even.
Yeah.
There's no, it's not there. It's, I wouldn't say there's no. It's hard to get loyalty in certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. And maintaining that top of mind connection, right, for that resell, it was very diligent work. That was one person's full-time job in this one scenario.
Yeah.
And that's maybe one of those questions to ask inside of your sales cycle is, you know, how important is that potential customer to you? They're not a customer yet. How many touch points do you need to have? And once you start mapping that out, congratulations, you now know what conversion is.
Yeah.
So what would you say some of the best practices are to get clear on this stuff? I mean, I leaned into the brainstorming side of it, which is, you know, imagine it, make it up. Would you interview people during the conversion process? Would you try and get as much as you could out of them, like at the end of the sales process? Like where would you be gathering your information?
I think what we just did most recently is we met with the whole team of potential participants in the back.
Okay.
And to help us prepare for that first meeting with the owners of the business, right? That discovery call.
Yeah.
Right? Validating discovery call where we will qualify but not close. We spent most of our time brainstorming the discovery questions to get our dialogue tight for the customer. And then I planned a meeting for the internal team that's going to be on that call. There's 4 of us. We intentionally limit to 4. We don't want to show up with an army of people to overwhelm them, right? That's the wrong play. Mm-hmm. But the 4 of us are going to get together and we're going to figure out who's doing what, do a little rehearsal, make sure we're in step, who's the lead, who's support, who asks what questions. We're going to be showing up as a team. We have to behave like a team.
Right.
Right. And we'll figure out the questions and get it organized and know who can do what, right? Yeah. Somebody already owns the relationship. They'll do the introduction. There'll be a clean handoff to the lead, right? We got to talk through it very parochially, right? And then we'll get going. And to some extent, the customer gets to lead that discussion, but we shouldn't start wrapping up that meeting until we get the answers to all our questions, figure out how to pivot back to what we haven't touched on yet, right?
Yeah.
That's why we build that list. It's why we're documenting our process.
Yeah. In the context of the brainstorming too, one of the most valuable things I've learned, I guess I'll go back to the from the lead conversion to sales process, is murder boarding. And so just putting out a nice 3-column chart, like what are all the ways that this deal could get killed?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredibly valuable process. And just for the sake of clarity, there's the blocks that you can see right in front of you, the objections you can imagine, so strong correlation. And then the third column is wildly imaginative stuff. Because the more time you spend in the conversations or the 2 beer in stories with some people,
right,
the more you learn about that crazy stuff that you couldn't possibly imagine being the thing that it hinged upon.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's always the 5 Ds that come for people, right? I mean, and that's not even the craziest stuff, right?
Absolutely. Do you want to share them for the audience? And it's valuable.
Oh, what do we have? We have death, we have disease, we have divorce. That's my top 3. Do you have the other 2?
Not off.
Oh,
I thought destruction was one of them, like earthquakes, typhoons, tsunamis.
Yeah.
Again, stuff that you could never predict, right?
Right.
And that's part of the value of having it on the murder board, is you just are psychologically prepared for stuff.
Yeah, it's shit happens, right? I mean, life, you all the best laid plans, right? The universe gets a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. There are disasters out there.
Yeah. So if you have a well-defined sales cycle, if it's efficient, well-documented, I would think that provides you some resilience even in the face of the universe voting.
And more importantly, if you're prepared preemptively, emotionally for something at that level, then your ability to adjust to something much more realistic is there already.
Right.
Oh, one of the 5 decision makers couldn't make it to the meeting today. Right. And it won't throw you off your game. And I think that's the big part about the imaginary side of brainstorming. It's just to give you that little bit of extra support.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that you'd like people to think about, or ways that we can empower them about, mapping out your decision-making process, understanding what the milestones are, or listening for the actual outcomes that buyers want, which I think is a piece we haven't mentioned today that we touch on regularly. They're never buying your thing, right? They're always buying the solution it'll provide, like how it relates to their problem.
Right.
I don't think we can say that enough.
Yeah. People buy solutions to pain. They buy happiness. They buy it's always from their perspective, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So your sales process in general, your cycle, meet them where they are, pace them, challenge them respectfully, lead them where you want them to go, right? And at the end of the day, they got to figure out how to say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the words I'd leave everybody with is cadence. There's a rhythm to it. And whatever that rhythm is, the fact that there's a cadence helps you understand multiple steps in a process, and probably takes longer than you think or longer than you were told it was going to take.
Yeah. Yeah. So be patient, be diligent, document, right? Refine over time. Make sure you know those points that tell you when you've gone from one stage to the other.
Absolutely. And if you have that and that clarity and you don't quit, you will outlast the competition.
Yeah.
Right. There's that scary statistic out there, which is 8 to 20 points of contact to equate to a sale, and the fact that even most sales professionals quit after the third try.
Interesting.
So that's just a little something to remember. I would always count to 20 touch points. You'd be surprised at how quickly you can get there.
It's also possible to get there too quickly.
Yes. Yes, very true.
Cadence, right?
100%.
I ask my people when they think the deliverable should be due.
Mm-hmm.
I ask my customers when they would like to have the next meeting, right? Yeah. I want the power to be over there, right? I want them to tell me they want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Be accommodating, be customer focused, listen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all based in service.
Cost of doing nothing, highlight pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to assuage that pain, right? Our job is to make that go away.
Absolutely.
So you're working 85 hours a week right now. You bought a business and now you think you're married to a business. Let's talk, right? Because that lifestyle you had in your mind when you bought it, that seems really far away right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they'll go, yes. Well, that's my job, is to help you get that lifestyle, right? Operational efficiency, right? Differentiate your product lines, more regular cash flow, revenue, profitability, right? Like this, we're going to fix these things. So Absolutely. You can take your kids to the park pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very well said. All right, I think we're going to start wrapping it up here. Thanks for your time, Rob, and all that consideration. I think one of the things that I'm leaving with is you can't over communicate. Sure, it can happen too much too soon, like maxing out those touch points too early. But if you understand what your process is and your sales cycle, then you can map that and leave the gaps in there that are supposed to be there.
Right.
Give them the time that they need. But it also takes pressure off on both ends, because you can kind of see where the horizon is and you know where you're steering for.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks to those of you who have hung out with us and those who catch the recording, and we'll be here next week as usual, musing on how to grow businesses. Thank you so much for your time, you guys.